you for joining us. I'm Tom Cleese with RIAA, and it's my pleasure this morning to kick off RIAA's Pride Month conversation with Congresswoman Sharice Davids and Tituss Burgess. I'm a big fan of both of these people, and I'm really glad that I had the opportunity to bring them together for a conversation. So just to introduce them both, he is a star of the stage and the screen. You might know him from 30 Rock and Netflix's The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. He's also the reason why no one in my household can say the words Pinot Noir without singing a little bit. Tituss Burgess, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you, Thompson. Thank you for having me, guys.
My pleasure. And she is the Congresswoman from Kansas City. She is a breaker of barriers, an attorney, MMA fighter, and a fantastic representative of the LGBTQ community and the Native American community in Congress, Congresswoman Sharice Davids. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
So I want to start with you, Congresswoman. This is Pride Month, and you are a co-chair of the Congressional LGBT Equality Caucus. And you also had the opportunity to be presiding over the House of Representatives during the debate that ultimately passed the Equality Act for the LGBT community in the House. Can you tell us a bit about what you were working on and what Pride Month means to the Equality Caucus?
Yeah. Well, first, can you call me Sharice while we're doing this? And then second, I think getting the chance to preside over the House at all is a pretty phenomenal experience for someone who never would have imagined that I would be representing Kansas in Congress. Getting to do that while we're debating such an important piece of legislation, the Equality Act would help ensure that LGBTQ plus folks across the country in every aspect of our lives are treated equally under the law, which is really what we all want. We want to make sure that when it comes to housing and education and access to healthcare, that we're not discriminated against. It's pretty wild that I can be the representative from the 3rd District in Kansas and in the United States House, and also be turned away for like an apartment or healthcare in my own district. So, I've been working on these issues since I got to Congress, and getting the chance to help not just elevate, but actually pass policies that might benefit, particularly our young folks in the LGBTQ Two-Spirit community has, it's an honor. It's a privilege.
You put it that way. I've thought about that juxtaposition, but the fact that if that doesn't pass this legislation, it's almost like telling, not only is it a slap in the face to you and our community, but it's a slap in the face to the people that you represent in Kansas. It's telling them that the person that they chose to have their best interest at heart when it comes to legislation, that their opponent, the person that they appointed doesn't matter, that it doesn't, the voice doesn't matter. It's cyclical. It goes around and around and around. So it's just so ridiculous that we're even fighting for this at this day and age. But thank God that, you're there and that you have those people's best interests at heart.
That's a really powerful point, Tituss. And I think that that's one of the things that keeps coming up about the Equality Act, is that I think a lot of people in the country don't even know that it is still legal in the United States to discriminate in so many venues on the basis of sexual identity, of gender identity. And it's something that people in some places, they're so far past this in their own head, in their own hearts, and the law is so far behind. So Tituss, could I ask you, in your world, in the world of music and entertainment and culture, as someone who shapes culture and influences, like what does in 2021 mean to you?
This last year and some change now, I think has been the great equalizer for all of us. And the thing that it has done both on a governmental level and a personal level is pulled all of our pants down. There's nothing else to hide. We've all seen where we're vulnerable. We're all seeing where the loopholes are. We've all seen what it looks like when we come together to save each other, to look out for one another. Why it took such a catastrophic events to remind us of the common thread, which is our humanity, is beyond me. I don't know why we need reminding of that. Some of my family members are, I'll say, culturally Christian. None of us are able to, and myself included, none of us are able to abide by all of the things that glorious book says that we're supposed to abide by. That said, oftentimes I have to remind them that their local vote affects my well-being. When I come home, even though they don't live there, I ask them to vote on behalf of the people that they love, not just themselves. So this Pride Month, I suppose, or Pride celebration, whenever you have it, wherever you are. For me, it means being my most raw, authentic self, flaws and all, to constantly walk in all that equalizes us, all that humanizes us. The okayness to not be okay, the right to soar when you are flying high. Someone else's brilliance, someone else's smarts, someone else's good fortune is energetically available to you. If in fact we are all connected, that is what pride means.
It means so much to hear you say that, and for you to be, allowing yourself to be vulnerable. And thank you so much for that. I guess both of you are such important representatives of your community. You are so visible, and you put yourselves out there. So what does representation mean to you? And this is a question for both of you, and whoever can hop in, to see someone like yourself, Sharice, to see a Native American woman and an LGBT woman in Congress, and Tituss, to see, openly gay Black men in entertainment and in culture, to see yourselves and people like you represented. Can you speak a little bit about that and how you'd like, what is the direction of that? What does it mean to you, and how do you see it shaping your communities?
I think that when any of us are doing the work that we're doing, you're just kind of like putting one foot in front of the next.
I promise I was going to say the same thing. You don't even think about it. That's honestly what I was going to say. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I just think that's where you feel, because you're so busy doing the thing, you don't have time to turn sideways and go, oh, isn't it great to see me? You know what I mean?
Well, I'll share a story actually. So when we got elected, so in 2018, Deb Haaland and I got elected as the first two Native women ever to serve in Congress, which is wild because I know tons of Native women who are super smart, driven, absolutely qualified to serve in Congress. And the longer I'm here, the more I see that. And for it to be 2018 and the first two Native women to get elected, but it was like drinking from 5 fire hoses when I got here, and it hasn't slowed down. And when President Biden appointed Deb Haaland to run the Department of Interior, I felt like I got the chance to experience the kind of collective joy that that tribal communities and Native communities probably experienced when her and I got sworn in, when we got elected. At the beginning of this country, the federal government and tribal governments were interacted through the Department of War. And then the Department of Interior was created. And then the Secretary of Interior is the primary, federal government person who interacts with tribal governments. So to go from that to having a Native woman running the Department of Interior is a huge milestone and step. Here's one of the things that I really get excited about when I think about having a more representative and more reflective Congress. And I think that this needs to be true of every aspect of in the federal government and in our state governments, in leadership positions across the board, is when you have people who have a diversity of lived experiences. And I say that recognizing that I'm a first generation college. I was raised by a single mom. I'm a first generation college student. I worked the entire time I was in school. It took me 4 years to get my associate's degree. It took me 4 years to get my bachelor's degree. And then I got the chance to go to law school. And up until I went to law school, I feel like I had a pretty ordinary experience. It is not uncommon to be raised by a single parent. It's not uncommon to be a first generation college student. It is not uncommon to work while you're in school or to take longer than 4 years to get a bachelor's degree, to go to community college. Where we have a real opportunity these days is that we are now sending people to places like Congress, to leadership positions across the federal government that reflect so many more experiences. And that's all of the experiences I already mentioned. And it's having more women, more people of color, more LGBTQ folks. And I think that when we do that, it's not just about that people can see it. That's really important. And I actually think that's part of why it's so important. The arts and culture and music, like those spaces, there has to be people that you can look at and see like, oh yeah, when I'm watching a movie, I see myself in this character or that character, that sort of thing. But it's important for the policy as well. And that's where we get the chance to work on that stuff. Because my lived experience has helped me see that when I'm in a room with decision makers and we're talking about a piece of policy at the federal level, it touches every single person in this country. Every time we vote on something, it's important and it impacts everybody. And if someone in the room has a different experience, we can ask different questions and explore how we get to better policy. We can also say, who isn't in the room? Who haven't we heard from? Because that has been a huge problem. There have been people since the country began who have tried to have their voices heard by decision makers and have been silenced or ignored or squished in one way or another. And we have a set of people coming into these positions now who are saying that's not acceptable anymore. We have to be listening to everybody.
Thank you so much for that. That there's so much there, and
Yeah.
it really does mean so much. And Tituss, the floor is yours. Please tell us about representation for you.
Sure. Well, she touched on so many things that I thought about, but also many things that I didn't really process. I'm going to piggyback on the thing about while the sight of someone who looks like you matters, it is policy. And I think, for me, the reason I don't sort of pause to think about how important it is to see people who look like me. When I was a kid, there wasn't many faces or bodies that reflected my then lived in experience, which was an experience trying to find the way to live in my experience. So, it was a season of searching. And I wouldn't take anything from my journey now because and this isn't true for all, but the foundation that I did have and my natural default setting when I came to Earth was to live fully in my ignorance until I figured it out. That said, I have always been sort of the first of many. You can't know, or what is it? You can't miss something you never had. You can't know what you want, and you don't see it. So I get that. But for me, it's too much work to do to sort of pause and look at it from the other angle. I suppose if I had it earlier, maybe the time would have been truncated, and I would have had the wherewithal to start some of these endeavors earlier. But jumping on the policy thing, where the representation matters, I think artistically is where my head goes when I think of representation how representation matters, because you can go work with all sorts of people, but for me, if the energy is not right, or if the collaborative sort of ethos and pathos isn't there, you don't want any part of it. And that is the thing that I look for. I look to first when I'm thinking how representation matters. And I think, if more of artists and more queer artists, if we are able to, it seems like our time uh, is, I don't want to say marred by, but we came here to do what we are doing, which is trend set, which is pave the way, which is to, take the lashing, but not, but fight back. And do it with nuance and class and flair. And I think, for the younger generations, I think that they are seeing the fruits of the labors of many of our ancestors and may not feel as impactfully about representation mattering, because they have lived inside a world that more readily accepts what they do and who they are. But we shouldn't get complacent or think that the work is over, because she's still in Congress fighting for the Equality Act,
Which is wild.
which is wild.
I love that one of the things that you mentioned was wanting to work with people who share an ethos, because I talk about that a lot with my team, and when we were hiring people, and then even when I was campaigning the first time, I was like, we just have to make sure that everybody understands the ethos of
Yes.
the campaign, or the ethos of the office. Like, we're here to be of service. We're here to listen. It's the whole approach that really matters when it comes to that, to everything.
Well, while it should not be the responsibility of either of you to have to pave the way for people like yourselves where you are, you really have. And we really appreciate the work that both of you are doing for your communities, and hope that every once in a while you can take that look sort of left and right, and understand how many people are following behind both of you. And I just wanted to ask one more question, since we are the music industry. Pride Month is Pride Month in a lot of ways because of music. And we wanted to ask if you had, one or two songs that are on your Pride playlist this year. Do you have a couple songs that really mean a lot to you right now?
Oh dear. I'll tell you what's been rotating in the house, and I suppose if it's playing in the house and it's playing in the heart, what's been on repeat for me is end of Act 1 to the musical La Page aux Fall. It's a song called "I Am What I Am," and the more I hear it, the older I get, the louder that message becomes, and the less fearful I begin to look at being myself, not through the lens of fear and not through the lens of ambush, but more through the lens of I have no other choice. Like, there's no other way to exist about the earth. Whereas once upon a time, there was a fight to be myself. There was a mandate that I be my self. And now it's like, well, who the hell else am I going to be? So this is it. And the freedom that I have found inside of that via the lyrics of that song has been immeasurable. And to think that I thought that I had already learned of that, I guess I hadn't. Every day is a new day to learn.
Wow.
Thank you so much.
That's so much more deep than what I've got going on. I love it. I was going to say, I was thinking about, I guess I've been kind of reconnecting with Make Me Feel by Janelle Monáe.
Oh, I love it.
I just like to dance. And so, I love the song. I love the whole album, actually. Are we still calling them albums? What do I call it?
You can call
Sure.
them albums.
I can still call it an album. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. But you know, anybody who knows me or has been in my car knows that I basically have a rotating playlist of either Adele or Beyonce. It just depends on my personal mood. I either want to cry or dance, I guess.
And sometimes they're just lemonading.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, that's all that I have today. Thank you both so much for being with us, for sharing your wisdom and your honesty, and most importantly, your time. This has been RIAA's Pride Month conversation. I am Tom Cleese. Thank you so much, Sharice Davids and Tituss Burgess. And we look forward to what both of you have coming in the next years.
Thank you.